che mamari nina. Tura la ba. Kopana lana tula ba.
I'm very happy to see you again and to connect with you.
Yourself. Oh.
The reason why I reached out in the first place is because I just want to connect with people online and bring the community together. You were showing me the New Zealanders that have a Spirit Fest, all online, all live, and it's actually just amazing to see the people that are taking initiative to get together online, even when we can't be there in person. And I know your spirit is very gifted in that way, that you like to find ways to connect people, and I just want for you to share a little bit of what you've been up to, and also talk a little bit about your store that you have, your new crystal store.
Okay. Well, I suppose I've been up to quite a lot because I'm very fortunate that where I'm stuck, or not, I suppose stuck is the wrong way of saying it, but where I have been privileged to spend my personal retreat time is also the place and the land where I have my shop. So the one thing that I'm busy with at the moment is building a pathway to the shop. And so some of the people that had visited the shop before now had gone to the left, whereas now they must go to the right. And so I'm really excited because there's a tree that we've got a river on the property, and we do beautiful ceremonies with the mandao and all of that at the river. And we were gifted with a willow that had fallen over. So for me, with the druidic side and the European ancestral side, willow, and in many cultures the willow is the grandmother. And so what she spoke to me about was that something that would be really, really important as a way for people to come into the space is to have the honoring of the grandmother and the grandfather as you enter. Because, as much as it is a crystal shop, the intention for the space is more in the line of a temple of self. And so, I'm very blessed with the crystals that they enable a really beautiful network, because when people go on the journey into the self or the spiritual path, one of the first things that people get attracted to is the gemstones. Because it's very well marketed and they're very beautiful. So it really calls people in very easily. And it's something that's really publicly available. If you're not, for example, the tradition that we work with is, unless you are born in that culture and unless you really have been guided to it by spirit, there's really no way of just accessing it off the bat. Like there's very few, or maybe not as much public knowledge where you can just walk into an Ndumba and go and see a Sangoma unless you have the know-how. And so with the gemstones, if you're interested in gemstones or any kind of a magic, then all you do is Google, and it brings up many, many different shops in Johannesburg and around the world. And so it's always been, it's my passion and it's my truth, but it is also a gateway point for so many, many people. And so the pathway is very special because on the left-hand side, they've asked at the entrance for there to be an altar on both the left and the right-hand side. And the left-hand side will be for the grandmothers. And that pathway will be lined with the willow branches that have fallen down from, as this tree has fallen down. Unfortunately, with the father side of the grandfather, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. So they've asked that, because we've got a lot of really big acacias on the property, they've asked that the right-hand side of the path is laid with acacia branches that I have been cutting down myself. And it's really, I'm not I've got one of these. And it does not translate into this, so it's been a really beautiful, say that again?
You've got 6 packs and guns. You're strong.
I've got 6 packs and guns, exactly, and they shoot noodles and stuff like that, they shoot lovely cakes and delicious sweeties. Yeah, so the whole labor of cutting the trees to lay the right-hand side of the path has been really, really interesting. And something that happened to me last week was really, really a beautiful experience, because the rapport with the stones I'm really familiar with. You know, I acknowledge that there is a consciousness to it, and I acknowledge that there is some kind of a presence and an access point or an anchor point of some kind of an energy that we work with. But from a mental perspective, I see this in the trees and the plants as well, but not necessarily. It's not a relationship that I necessarily treasure or honor as much as I do with the stones. And so what was happening was I was busy digging out some really invasive plants for this new pathway, and it's really like a weed that takes over and it kills all the indigenous stuff. And so I was taking it out, and the spirit of the trees speaks very clearly to me when I listen. And they were saying, please be very careful, because you're hurting us while you're taking this invasive plant out. And I didn't acknowledge that. And so what ended up happening was I had been doing it for 3 days, and I was really tired, and so I started hacking at this invasive plant, and it kept hitting the other trees as well. And so they said, Kulu, we've asked you very, very nicely, please just bear in mind. And this thing came in me. It wasn't a conscious thought, but this perspective rose in me and said, no, don't worry, the suffering will end. You will grow back and you will heal through the process. And it was really, the way that Spirit works sometimes is so beautiful, because what ended up happening was the next hack that I took with the spade, the handle got grabbed by the tree and it got flung up into the air, and it actually clapped me on the back of the head. So I actually, last week, I cut the back of my head open with the spade, and it was so... I don't know if anybody's ever had like a head wound, you'll know that the blood is immense. So that was a good moment to just breathe and come into myself, and it was really amazing, because I went to the clinic to go get it seen to, and as I'm sitting and waiting, I just feel this laughter and this joy coming from the trees, saying that, don't worry, my brother, the suffering will end soon, and you'll grow and heal, And my hair is such a special thing to me that they had to shave like a patch at the back of my head, and so now they were like, yeah, don't worry, your branches will go back, and Kulu, it's going to be fine. So like the whole point of the story like that is because this place is a shop that you can buy stones and you can buy spiritual paraphernalia and so on, but at the end of the day, it is not the tools that we use to access Spirit. It's the tools that provides the format or the platform through which we can engage with Spirit, and the lessons that it has for us, they have for us. And so as much as it is my gift to the world to open up the space to be able to share and co-create within, it's also my own personal work, because as much as, now I'm building this pathway for people to walk into the space, I'm also creating a road through which my ancestors and myself can enter into the place and the space, not place, because it's a space. Am I okay just waffling? Because I can just waffle. I feel like this is beautiful conversation time.
I just want to point out the beauty of your storytelling and the meaning behind each thing that you do. And that's also why I want you to explain more about your shop, because like you're saying now, it's not just a shop, and it's not just about the crystals. And that's kind of where I would like to go, is that deeper meaning. So I appreciate you sharing that story. But let us kind of talk a little bit about how you first got in a rapport with stones, and how for you specifically it opened up that doorway to Spirit.
Hey. We've got years, my brother, so we will get there, but I'll think what I can start with. I think probably when I was a child, there weren't so many like open crystal shops. I think anybody growing up in South Africa has a fond memory, or anybody that resonates with crystals and gemstones has a fond memory of digging in a scratch patch somewhere.
Definitely.
For me, I have memories of that, and I always, when I was young, I always had this real attraction towards discovering treasure within the earth. So as a child, I wanted to be an archaeologist or a geologist. And so it's so beautiful to see how my journey has unfolded, because both archaeology and geology are really relevant to, you know, the shamanic or the sangoma or the druidic path that I walk, because it is this resonance and attraction towards the ancient world and a knowing of what once was, or a desire to rediscover what once was, and also a knowing that there is a deep connection within me into the earth. And so probably the most prevalent story that really pulled me into it was when I was in school. When I was in high school, I used to show dogs, shows, and you know, groom the dogs and run them around beautifully and so on. And there's this competition that they have for 13 to 18-year-olds where you basically compete as a handler of the dog to present it best. And the winner of this goes to the UK to a show called Crufts to represent our country. And so what ended up happening was I was a little bit of a foolish skateboarding kid, all on the wild side. I used to play games like Magic the Gathering, so I was always like attracted to these other dimensional beings and, you know, all of this other stuff. And so what ended up happening was I fell off the side of a two-story, or the first level of a two-story building, doing some skateboard tricks, and I basically shattered all of the bones in my left ankle and tore all of the muscles as well. And my right ankle was also quite badly injured, but not as badly. And now this was probably about 3 months away from this national competition which I'd qualified for, and I was the pick of the competition, so to speak, so I was likely going to win it. And you know, we went to the hospital and they said, listen, unfortunately you probably won't be able to walk for 6 months. And you know that with such a big opportunity on the line, it really wasn't gonna crack it. And so what ended up happening was a friend of my mother's who does Reiki, and she works with crystals as well. She said to my mum, no, bring him around and we'll do some Reiki work on him, you know, twice a week maybe, and we'll see how it goes. And you know, believe it or not, probably about a month and a half in, 6 weeks, I was running. You know, I was quite strong on painkillers, but I was running. You know, and the doctors said that I wouldn't walk for 6 months. You know, so the thing for me, what it did was it actually opened my mind to the possibility that you know, that the magic is real. You know, I feel like there's a lot of theoretical practice in when people first get onto the path, or even late into the path. They kind of it gets into the mind a lot, especially with the crystals, because people read the books and they want to understand what the properties of the stone are, and they want to understand the knowledge of it rather than the knowing of it. And so it really opened me up to the fact that people really need to understand that the magic is real. You know, the sci-fi, not the sci-fi, the fantasy stories that we all read growing up, and all of these games and so forth, it is real. And it is really within our grasp. And that was, the crystals was the first thing that showed me that. Another story that later affirmed it was, so with my Twasa, what happened with my lineage is that, I don't know if it's the same with everybody, but you have to get permission from both sides of your family to do the work, because, you know, your mother and your father are the living carriers of your ancestral line. And so my mother has always been very connected to this type of stuff. My grandmother was very in tune, she was a channel and so forth. But my father is a veterinarian, and he didn't buy into any of this. And so what ended up happening was, after coming back from spending some time in Soweto with my Gobela, I said to her, you know, my father's not going to give permission. He doesn't even believe in God. You know, how is he going to let me go and live with Africans in a village and learn about, you know, African magic? And so she said, no, pray, and they will give, you know, your ancestors will give you the opportunity to learn and do the things that you need to do. And so I prayed at her Makosini, and then we went on the mountain and we prayed. And I got home that end of that weekend, and my mom and my dad work in the clinic together. And so I went into the clinic just to greet them, because I hadn't been home in a while. And there was a lady in the clinic, and she had a dog that had basically slipped a disc in its spine, and it was paralyzed. and she'd been to 2 or 3 other vets, and all of those vets had said, listen, that we can't do anything for the dog, please just put it down and put it out of its misery, it's really suffering. My father said the same thing, and this lady was obviously in a real state because it was a young dog. She wasn't ready for it to part, and so I'm so grateful for the dog to allow me for the situation. But I said to the woman, listen, this is what I do. I've done a course in crystal healing, I've done a course in Reiki, and now I'm busy being initiated as a traditional healer. Would you allow me to use my medicine or my magic on this dog to see what we can do? And it was really, really amazing, because the end of the line, this lady's going to lose the dog already anyway, and so she decided to give me the opportunity to do it. And basically what ended up happening was the first big amethyst cluster I ever got, or was inspired to get, or to bring into the work, I put in like a small pen for the dog so that it couldn't move around too much, and I sat with the dog every day and I prayed, and I did some Reiki work on it, and I did work with the crystals, did a little bit of crystal massage on its back, and probably 3 weeks later the dog was not paralyzed anymore. It didn't have a limp, it didn't have any issues, and I think about 6 months after that, the lady brought the dog around again, and there was no trace of anything. And so pardon?
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's why I say the magic is really, really real, and I don't think people really grasp it, because we get a stone and we bring this into our lives and we accept that it's got some kind of a transformational effect, but the real quantitative experience that one can have with the crystal is there if you're willing to open yourself up to that level of belief and dedication to the practice. And so those I suppose there's so many stories of things that really just affirm within me that the path that I'm on is the right path for me, and so much excitement in it. But I think those were 2 real stories that kind of solidly affirmed that the working with the crystals is where I need to be at. Besides my geological interest and the intricate beauty that forms from the earth, there is the magic to it as well.
Oh,
and yourself, what got you in? Like, I'd love to know what got you in.
Well, what got me in was the crystalline structures of the water and nutrition, actually, that opened up the innate wisdom within my own body, and I always find the portal to spirit through my own body, and healing it and going through the health journey. So nutrition and cacao was the way in for me.
Okay. No, but I mean with the crystals, because I know you like crystals as well.
So I've got a very interesting relationship with crystals. When I first started spirituality, or on my journey, I was very technical, so mind-oriented, research, doing all of those things. So when you talk about those people that was doing the research, wanting to know about what they do, that was me. Because I'm just that way inclined, and I've been searching for a long time for these spiritual experiences that I read online, but only now, going through Sangoma and going through everything and all the changes that I'm going through, do I realize that this is my spiritual journey, and this is how I connect to spirit, which is how I always have. So when working with crystals, I'm a very hardy system. My system is very hardy. I can take substances, plant medicines, anything, and I can take it at such a high dose. That's only when I can feel it, see the benefits. So with crystals, my journey has been quite interesting. I would have a few, just a select few, and I would just carry it around with me all the time. And fluorite is the stone for me, and the one that I worked with the most, because of that brain orientation, the left and right balancing, and just that that optimization that I was looking for, and helping to navigate the electromagnetic fields and things. And all I would do is hold a crystal for a long time in my hand. I would take it everywhere where I go. I would drive with it. It's just a very unconscious thing that how I work with the crystals. And over time, after when I put it down, and then I go about my daily life, then I see the changes, and I see what life is without it. And then I know, okay, those are the lessons. Those are the lessons that it's teaching me. These are the things that it helped me in my life, because it was very subtle things. So, so having it for like a whole week, and having my normal life, putting it away, and then going about my day, I could see the changes, and that's how I worked with the crystals, and still do sometimes. I haven't worked with any in a while. But now, I would like, because I know that your relationship is so deep with the stones, and they've taught you many different things, they've whispered some secrets, and I would like to know what secrets they're allowing you to share with the public about, like, what are the technologies behind, the geometrical structures of the stones and the electromagnetic frequencies that they are using. How does that affect our energy field, and how does that affect us in our own life? How does this magic actually work?
Okay, well, that's a whole suitcase full of books. So the one secret that is not so much of a secret, and whenever I do a workshop or whenever I do a talk or anything like that, the first thing I start with is, don't listen to me, don't read a book, don't do anything other than choose to have a relationship with this thing. And so I really appreciate, the alchemist in you and the scientist in you is a beautiful anecdote of how people should start to work with crystals, because it is all about learning to build a relationship with your practice together with this thing, because one of the examples I always give is that, the way that you and I communicate, and the way that you communicate with your gogo, or your gogo's gogo, is very, very, very different. And the magic that you bring into the ceremonies, so if you are holding a ceremony, is very, very different to the magic that you would bring into a ceremony if it wasn't you facilitating the ceremony. And so when you look at the books, they tell you different properties and different vibrations of the crystals, but they work very differently. And without getting too much into the technical of things, for example, a heart healing crystal, something that people always talk about, is something like rose quartz. Now, rose quartz is such a beautiful thing because, first, there's many different ways that one can view it, and I feel like you need to set up your belief system to engage with the magic of the stones. I'll go into a little bit about mine afterwards, but so one of the ways that I see that rose quartz works is that people say that rose quartz is for love and for peace, and this just chilling. And the thing that's very interesting is that the way that it works is, as a teacher, it's not going to just give you those things, because no teacher ever just gave you anything. So what they do is they assist in manifesting opportunities in which you can learn how to bring that energy into yourself. So let's say you are not necessarily happy with your physique, your body weight. Let's say that's an issue. And what will happen is, when you take on the rose quartz, what it'll do is it'll work on your mind and it'll work on your energy field. So you'll come to a little bit of calm about it. But then what it will do is it will manifest these experiences where somebody will actually come up to you and say, "Hey, you're getting a bit fat, hey?" And so for me, the beautiful thing about crystals is they always allow this opportunity where you can either choose to become the hero of your own story or the victim of your own story. And so the rose quartz, in that situation, what happens is, if you are not in a victim mentality already, if you're the observer of your own situation and your own story, then you can step away from the reaction to the comment, and you can take it in and try to understand what level of personal truth that person is speaking to you with the stone. And so, you can either say, oh yes, I am a little bit weighty, but it's because I really, really enjoy lavish foods, and I really enjoy to not exercise, and I really enjoy to understand that there is a power in my body holding that much presence, if that makes sense. Or you could go into the stories of, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not, I need to do more, I need to eat less, you need to, you get all of these rattling things inside your mind. And so what will happen is somebody will buy the crystal, and then bad stuff will happen, and then they'll say, oh, this is not for me, and then it ends up in a bowl full of other crystals on the kitchen table or in the living room or whatever. And so for me, one of the things that another secret, so to speak, that they've told me is that instead of going into a crystal shop, and this is not a marketing tool or anything like that, instead of going into a crystal shop and buying many, many different crystals, rather take the culmination of the money that you're wanting to spend on all of these things and buy one really good crystal. Buy something sizable. So something like I put this one here because I think it's one of the most understated ones is quartz, and so this is a really, really nice quartz point. And so if anything, if you ever have any doubt in terms of what crystal is for you, because I've worked in many shops and that's what they ask, oh, what crystal is for me? First it's the astrology, second it's this, and everybody goes into all of these really complicated ways of trying to understand what is for them. But rather take some time, look around, look what calls you. That whole calling you is an attraction to the color, the pattern, the shape, some unexplainable reason as to why you just feel a resonance with it. And if you can't afford it now, don't give into the addictive nature of getting a thing. There's the teaching in that opportunity, that moment as well, is to hold on like a squirrel a little bit and save your things until you can get the thing that you need. Because I find a lot of the time with the crystals, people, there is this magpie mentality in the crystals. Oh, I need to get all of these crystals because they're going to help me. And I see a lot of people wear many, many crystals all over their body, many bracelets, many different things, and there's a different technology to that. But also something that I would suggest before doing that is to actually get the one and work with the one, like what you said, is take a week with it, take a week without it, measure them up, see how it affects your energy, and then that's how you learn to use it as a tool. You learn how to go to class at the University of the Crystalline Teachers. You've taken on this course. Don't take on 10 other courses at once, because I promise you're not going to deal with the workload. Focus here and then move forward with it.
Yeah.
And so something that's really, really interesting is that around this type of subject is with my shop. It's a double story. It's lifted up in the air, and next to it I'm busy digging an underground meditation room. And what you said something about how you like to go through your own body to find your truth. And I was talking to a friend of mine earlier about something that really doesn't resonate with a lot of people in terms of churches, is that they feel like there must be a medium between you and God. There must be something in between you and spirit that will help you to translate that. And so something that they've said to me is that through this, this diversifying of going up to get the stones and going down into the earth to get our truth, they explained that, we don't take our truth from the stones and we don't take our healing from the stones. They are companions that work with us through the process. And it is a technology. And so they said, go make a space for people to go and get their answers from the ground, and before they come to shop in your shop, let them go and sit and discover if they have their own truth to their answers, and then come up. So go to spirit, go to the Most High to access this, because that's where we need to hold them. We don't need to hold them as a rock. We don't need to hold them as just this thing that we take from the earth for our own benefit. We take it from the heavens through the earth for a co-creative benefit for all. And you said something about the technology of crystals, and like I say, there's so many different ways that you can go about it, because something that might resonate with you is the mineral side of it. And so you understand that through your nutritional practices there are various different kinds of minerals inside. So a quartz crystal is silicon dioxide. There's many different other crystals, and let's say you have an ailment and you would take let's say lithium supplements. I don't know what that would be for, but there are crystals that contain lithium inside, and that when you work through that crystal, all of those minerals are in us. Even when we have a deficiency, that vibrational atom is still within us. And so when you connect with the stone, some people will put it in the water, like what you were saying about the structuring of water. People will put certain crystals in the water to drink the energy of it like that. People will lay it on their body and do various different things. But there is a communication between the atoms in the crystal and within us, and that builds it up again. For me, one of the things that I really, really appreciate is that when I went to New Zealand, their sacred space for the traditional or the indigenous people there is called a marae. And so the marae is like a building that serves as a temple, like a church. It serves as a community hall. It serves as a room for meetings, for all different types of things, funerals, weddings, etc. And I was very blessed with the opportunity to go to 2 maraes in a sacred place called Waikari Moana, and it's something like 144,000 acres of native bush. Most of the trees are like 100,000 to 500,000 years old. It's an ancient place, and the marae there, the main marae that we went to was called Waimoku, and it was so beautiful because it's a really famous marae in New Zealand. And standing outside the front, they have this head of a tiki, which is like a warrior spirit, on the top of the entrance. And it was the place was so run down, and it was like had moss growing on it and paint was peeling. And I kind of stood there and I took a moment and I said, my brother, because they believe this is a living entity, it's not just a building, there is a being that is the building that we enter into. And I said, my brother, why, if you are such a sacred and renowned place, do you look so shabby? And the building came straight back to me. The tiki says to me, my brother, if you could see the truth of my essence, you would not say that. Don't come into the space as you are and see the reflection of yourself through me and say that it looks shabby. Look at yourself first. Come to a higher level of truth within yourself, and then come to look. And so I sat down and I took a meditation, and I just connected to the highest perspective of the self, of this building self. And it was reminiscent of Valhalla, these huge golden halls made of gold, and everything is shining, beautiful carvings and crystals and magnificent. And so it was really beautiful, because when you go inside of a marae, the central pillar, they have something that's right through the middle called a po, and it's got these really beautiful patterns on it, which is really, really psychedelic. And what was explained to me by the spirit of the place was that this building was just one level of this building that existed in multiple different levels. And so depending on your vibration, depending on your expanded consciousness, that is the reality at which you access this building. And so when you are in a very high vibrational state, you come into this reality of this place that is something very, very different to what everybody else is experiencing. And so whilst we are all in the co-creative reality, we are all on different levels of experiencing it. And there's also different levels of ourselves, because this po, that, like, I try to make it in a three-dimensional understandable way by saying, imagine each one is a different floor, and that pole is the elevator that goes through all of them. And so for us, we are the same. We have an elevator that goes through the core of our being, all the way to the central sun, that is God, or the creation itself, all the way down into the manifestation, which is earth, the core of the earth. And that pillar holds all of the energy that is the expression of us, but expressed in all of these different forms. And so what was such an amazing teaching through that was that crystals are the same thing. That crystals are the physical embodiment of a full array of energies, a full different level of spectrum. So, an amethyst would contain the vibration of the violet ray and hold that violet-purple spectrum. And so you could use that, like I said earlier, as an access point or an anchor point in this level of your experience or your consciousness to access the different levels of the amethyst energy. Or even use that as a way of accessing the different levels of yourself. You create this communication between something that is constantly in pure connection within all of its different dimensional expressions, and connect to that form of yourself there. And so it's a really, really beautiful thing, because what ends up happening is that it's not necessarily about trying to create perfection in this self. It's about understanding that you have the ability to navigate all of the different levels of yourself. And so the right and the wrong disappears because all of it is simultaneously happening, and you're just able to, kind of step in and out through these different kinds of tools. Yeah, and so part of my work on the land is in Maori. They also have something that they call a kaitiaki, and it's something that I really appreciate in terms of the stones, because something people say a lot of the time is that you don't own a crystal. You're just the guardian of it, or it's just with you for now, because many people that have stones or work with stones know that they travel and they go and they disappear and you gift them, and there's all of these different dynamics. And so as a kaitiaki, the meaning of the word is a protector and a guardian. You are the keeper of sacred wisdom, in essence. So you are the keeper of this thing. And so for me, I consider myself a kaitiaki of crystals, and anybody else that resonates with them, whether you give your life to it or not, you are a protector of that energy. And so with creating the space that I'm working on creating, it is one of those levels, like the level that a marae has. It is a gateway point, an access point, where I choose to have the responsibility of being the kaitiaki and working together with the crystals to allow it to be a very high vibrational, energy dense space where people can come in and access those different levels of themselves. And so that's why I really love to work with the crystal grids, because the crystal grids create such a dense and present vibration in the third dimensional perspective that even those that are very skeptical of crystalline energies and all of that type of stuff can come into the space and have that experience, because not just the fact that these crystals have a presence, but also because it's actually allowing them to tap into a different dimensional perspective of themselves where that knowing already exists.
Beautiful. Wow. So Spirit of Stone, that's your shop, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're creating. You're not creating just a store where you're selling crystals. It's a place for people to really get to connect to who they are and understand the tools and technologies of what the stones bring, and also their own spirit.
Yeah, exactly. So the space itself is the Spirit of Stone is the beginning side of it, because that's where my heart sits. So it's something that I am able to do my love whilst I bring everything else together. Spirit of Stone, I do retail, and then I do wholesale as well. So I do a bit of exporting. And so the main reason with that is that with a lot of the concepts that I'd like to bring into play, there's not a real ability to create that abundance in another way. And so we've got kind of this contract with the earth spirits and the energy of the crystals that they manifest themselves in a way that allows me to bring that abundance in. So it's really just the beginning of a gateway, the gateway that allows the energy to flow into the space. Part of the real passion exists in the fact that cohabitation is a very, very important thing, especially in a place, or actually in the world, because we have the Rainbow Nation here, but I feel like people, it's the whole world that has become kind of galactic in its connections. We're not just Earth species anymore. There's many different forms of consciousness choosing to experience on this plane, and so I would like to bring as much of that as I can together in a way that that doesn't make us scared, because many people look at a shaman, let's say the Reiki people or the energy healing people, they will look at shamanic traditions and there's a lot of fear behind that. So there's no integration of the practices, because they say, oh, that's witchy boo-boo stuff, I don't really want to get involved with that. So it's really about demystifying the practices. So Sangoma, for example, I grew up in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, and as a young white man, and most people that I know or knew growing up have no idea what that is, because our only real source when you're disconnected from the interaction of it is things like the Daily Sun, which has headlines like "Snake raped me in my sleep," and when this is the public information that's given to people about what it is to be a sangoma, then there's only fear generated by it. And so the real gift is that with stones, because there are many different traditions, not just spiritual, but also religious. You know, Christianity, if you look at the Pope, he wears a big amethyst ring and he's got a big amethyst necklace. When you look at Hindu culture or Muslim culture, all of these different religions and human culture everywhere in the world uses crystals in some kind of a way for some kind of a spiritual purpose. It's really, when you get to the roots of it, it's really generally not just for aesthetics. And so it's a beautiful gateway to allow all of those different paths to come together in a space out of the mutual interest or mutual attraction or resonance with one thing, and come to share it together. Because you know, we're all talking about the same type of thing at the end of the day. You know, it's not necessarily all exactly the same, but we're all talking about the same stuff, just in our own different languages. And so the whole purpose is to demystify these things that create fear in others in their respective paths, so that there can be a cultural integration. So that, you know, don't walk in the street and people sometimes say, you know, you're a white man, white people don't do this ancestor stuff, they do church. And so, you know, the whole, I suppose, education of people to understand that we are all the same, and when we die we do not have color, we do not necessarily have specific culture, and so we all come from that place and we all go to that place. So why is there such a deep segregation in this place? If, you know, we start together and we end together, why are we not together here? Yeah, so I'm very blessed that the crystals have allowed me to begin that type of work.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You know, so it's what is called for during this time of coming back together, coming back to unity. And ultimately, you know, that's why it's called the Alchemy of Remembrance, is because we're all just coming to remember who we truly are. And when we can start to know that that's the goal, and we start to remember who we are, there is that sense of knowing who we are, and that connection between who we are, and through that connection we are able to connect with others, whether they're in a different religion, in a different tradition, you know, and it's a beautiful thing. So I'm grateful, and I bless you as you continue to go on your journey, because I know it's going to continue to expand, and many people are going to be congregating to your place to learn those truths.
What venue is, I'm excited.
Yeah. So is the shop up? You did have a grand opening at the beginning of the year, right?
So I think we've been essentially open just over a month. We did it on the 22nd of February. It was a really, really beautiful day. We brought in many different traditions and cultures, and we shared the magic with all of those that chose to come. You know, so it really was a beautiful day. And so we've been open for just over a month. And obviously, with the current situation, there's not much opportunity for that. Yeah. But it is an opportunity for this, which is really, really great.
And I guess there's also opportunity for you to continue building and growing.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of time for pottering, because obviously, whilst the shop is open, I have to really be present in the space itself, or at least not too distant from the space. And so there's a lot of things that really need to come together, so that when I'm open again, I can sit and do little bits and pieces of this and that.
You know, I wanted to talk about something that you spoke about a while back, and I just want to point on the amazingness of the teachers that crystals are. Because of that idea you said, where people they have this thing about them where they have to buy the crystals, and they have to have this and they have to have this for their own growth. And I just think it's such such a funny paradox that the crystals have brought us, because it's material, and it comes in the most beautiful form that Mother Earth can ever create. It's just this precious, beautiful being that we're all just attracted to, and it really brings that out of us, that other side of desire, and that's already right there is the beginning teachings that the crystals bring, is that what is our relationship to desire. and attachment to things. And I've always, there are people that talk about the stones that break their own stones, and the transformation that they have to go through because of this like tragedy, but it was actually like a big teaching, and
non-attachment,
and I really give such reverence and respect to teachers like this and teachers like Ish Cacao. I think they work very similarly in that subtle areas of our lives. The very essence of how we interact with the world is how we do anything is how we do everything, and that's what they're trying to teach us. And because I think also we tend to also want to go to these lavish experiences and these big spiritual awakenings, and for us to break through, but to have those experiences and then bring it into the real world can be challenging, and sometimes often does. But with the crystals and Ish Cacao, things work a little bit differently and more gracefully.
Yeah, I think we know that from our experience with our work.
Yeah. So it's an amazing journey, and I really appreciate that you're able to share it and open up that space. Like, I cannot tell you how much from my heart, sincerely, how amazing it is, and I wish to be there someday to be able to see it.
One day. Yeah. When the time is right. We'll make you sing from the roof.
Yeah, Ancestors moved me from Joburg, so I guess I'll be there when they call me again.
Of course. Where are you now? Are you in Durban or in Cape Town?
Cape Town now.
Okay, well when the lockdown is done, there's a place called Rimfasmark. It's on Namibia from you, and that it's really, really beautiful place. Did I tell you about the 3 different kinds of fluorite from there?
No.
Oh, so you were just saying that fluorite is one of your favorites, and fluorite is also one of my favorites because this place which is called Rimfasmark, there's 3 different valleys type of thing, or 3 different spaces, and in each space the fluorite forms differently. So the one has cubic, the one has octahedronal, and the one has got botryoidal, which is balls. And so it's exactly the same mineral. The kilometers between them is not really big enough to have that big of an impact in terms of geological formation, but the vibration of that exact mineral in this one place is a cube, and here is an octahedron, and here is a sphere.
Wow.
And so that's definitely worth taking. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. There's some really beautiful stuff for your ancestors out that side as well.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to check those out. Those the geometrical structures. But the only issue then is that I've got to really keep it safe. It's something about me and my ancestors that I use something till it's like really transformed, and I really use it with force. So maybe I must, because I know the fluoride also is a big teacher of that, because it's so easily chipped and breaks, and the perfect structures always get damaged. So it also is a good teacher for me to learn to work with grace.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's amazing. And the other thing that I worked with crystals for is making a energetic grid for myself. And I guess it's also tapping into the Atlantic technologies of working with the different crystals and what they do on the points of the body. So the one pendant here and gems on your hands, and also precious metals and things. Do you think that crystals have a place to play for us during this time of 5G coming into effect?
Oh, it's really such an amazing question, because 2 steps back, there's do you know where Phalaborwa is? So Phalaborwa, I think it's, I don't know specifically geographically where it is, but I think it's in the northwest or something like that. But it's in South Africa, and the area is really well known for a type of crystal called magnetite. And so magnetite is a really interesting crystal because we actually have liquid magnetite in our brains that allows us to kind of align to the poles of the planet. It allows the physical being and the mind itself to find like, do you know how GPS tracking works, where they triangulate a thing? And so what it does is that metal in our brains allows us to triangulate with the North Pole, the South Pole, which is the magnetic fields of the planet, not necessarily the physical location, and us as the third point, and that allows us to be grounded and centered. And so in Phalaborwa, because there is such a strong or such a huge amount of this mineral, which is naturally magnetic, it has a natural magnetism to it, it has actually affected the gravity there. So if you go to certain places in Phalaborwa, it is my understanding that if you stood on a scale there, you'd be a little bit heavier than you would be somewhere else. Yeah. And so it's really interesting because it is the magnetism and gravity of the Earth that creates atmosphere. You know, there's a lot of other things in play, like the movements and all of that type of stuff, but those are two really important parts of it. And so when you talk about creating an electromagnetic field or an aura of a thing, and you have such a simple example as a crystal like magnetite creating a denser gravity in a place, it always makes me think about Dragon Ball Z, because in Dragon Ball Z they've got this training room where you can like up the levels of gravity and you can get much stronger in that place. And so if there is natural earth technologies that exists like this, then that would probably mean that in that area the atmosphere is very different in terms of the radiation that it allows in. So, you know, sunlight itself is a radiation. There's different waves and vibrational levels of the radiation that comes from the sun. And obviously it's the ultraviolet that burns us. And so I think, you know, not obviously, I'm not a scientist, I do not know, but I'm pretty sure. And, you know, this is the same type of concept that comes out of microwaves. If you were to put yourself in a microwave, you'd boil your insides because it's sending a certain frequency of radiation. And so when you talk about creating crystal grids to assist in the maintenance of these types of fields, then, you know, if it can affect the way that radiation from the sun comes down into our space, then I think it's very, very plausible that you can use technologies. You know, you obviously have people have seen that you've got crystals that are for electromagnetic protection and that type of stuff. Things like black tourmaline. Black tourmaline is amazing because it is something called it has piezoelectricity, so it has the ability to conduct electricity in itself. And so tourmaline is a really beautiful stone when it comes to protection because it works with transmuting the ions. You know, it changes the charge of the ions that are in the space. And so, you know, I don't like to give any kind of factual information out because it's not necessarily 100% true, because there's no, you know, in my belief, there's no real universal truth to the experience of a thing. So, you know, if you wanted to, you could grid your house in black tourmaline, and that could assist in transmuting the radiation that's coming into your space. You know, for me, I feel like it's a real tender subject to get involved in, but, you know, don't give fear to things like that. So, you know, when you talk about one of the first crystals that everybody goes for, I used to work at Monte Casino and we used to get hundreds of people through, is protection, you know, psychic protection, all of these different types of things. And so I feel like that in itself, the teaching that exists within that magic is that you really have nothing to be afraid of. And the more that we seek to put extra layers of armor on ourselves through these technologies, the more we're actually encasing our fear rather than facing it. And so, you know, we need to understand that this is not who I am. This is not who I am. And every external experience that manifests in the reality is a creation that stems from whatever your perspective is that is creating the experience. You know, for me, I believe that there is this generation, this co-creation of a generated experience that we can all exist within. And the purpose of that is not necessarily to manipulate or control other people, though there is teaching in that. The purpose in it is to understand that what is manifesting is not out to get you, it's out to teach you. And so many years ago I had an experience with somebody that This person was perceived as somebody who worked with demonic entities and did a lot of evil work, so to speak. And I'm so very grateful to this person because they've been one of my biggest teachers in my life. Because what ended up happening was, we had this interaction, and I started to get these dreams where these demonic entities were coming in on me, and I was starting to have to cleanse myself every day, and these dreams, really graphic dreams of mass murder and rape and all of this type of stuff was coming up. And so the technologies that I had at hand at that time were all about reflecting that and sending it away, and not necessarily sending it back like a lot of the shamanic traditions do, but sending it into the earth so that it can be transmuted and used in a beneficial way. And so I was wearing tourmalines, and I was wearing obsidians, and I was wearing all of these crystals for protection. And so what they all did was they actually took my power out of myself and put it into this external tool. And that can be valuable because then there's no doubt of the self. There is this knowing that I am protected because of this thing. But for me, the teaching isn't necessarily to rely on the thing as a way of understanding that you're protected. It is a guidance in terms of getting to a place where you understand that you are always protected, and that everything is happening to you all of the time is actually for your benefit and not necessarily for anything else. And so using those stones for protection, I actually allowed myself to become more afraid of this person, more intimidated by this person, and actually angry at them to the point where I went and I physically confronted them and told them to fuck off. And I kind of actually had to step back from that situation and understand in terms of where I was taking ownership and responsibility for this person's actions, and where I was taking responsibility for my own actions in terms of how much fear I was generating through this, this victim thing, like this is an evil person, I am a hero, save, So there were so many dynamics that played out in it, but it was, from the outside of that, or the other end of the story and the learning, I come to understand that, why must I shield myself with all of these layers when in actual fact everything that comes to me is still me, teaching myself how to be more myself. And so rather than fearing and dreading these dreams, I should have faced them and tried to understand what fear was trying to be expressed, maybe what past life things, maybe all of these different stories, rather than, I need to be afraid, let's put on some armor and go to war. And so long way around of your 5G question, I feel like it's exactly the same thing. We are getting radiated by everything all of the time.
So
by the moon, by the other planets, by everything. There's so much radiation in the reality, because radiation is just the vibration of light frequency that is bouncing off of stuff, that's emitting from a space, that's going everywhere. So I think honestly, like if we knew what kind of radiation was happening, I mean, the radiation that exists just for this physical vessel to be present here is so phenomenal.
Well, we're coming up on the end almost. I think we're like 2 minutes and then this thing is going to crash. But I just want to say thank you very much for that answer, that you didn't suggest crystals as a way, even though you promote crystals, because it is that. It really is that of bringing sovereignty back to your own being and finding ways that strengthen you. And this goes with working, so it's working with the crystals, working with nutrition to strengthen your body and strengthen the cells from the inner level to actually radiate a frequency that can help protect you, rather than relying on these tools. So thank you. I appreciate it.
I feel like we should get rid of the word protect and have